I looked up the Lichen Wikipedia article and I was going to read some of it here. A lichen is a composite organism that arises from algae or cyanobacteria living among filaments of multiple fungi species in a mutualistic relationship. Lichens have properties different from those of their component organisms. They come in many colors, sizes, and forms, and are sometimes plant-like, but are not plants. They may have tiny leafless branches, fruticose, flat, leaf-like structures, foliose, grow crust-like, adhering tightly to the surface, substrate, like a thick coat of paint, crustose, have a powder-like appearance, leprose, or other growth forms. A macrolichen is a lichen that is either brush-like or leafy. All other lichen are termed microlichens. Here, macro and micro do not refer to size, but to growth form. Common names from lichen may contain the word moss, reindeer moss, Iceland moss, and lichens may superficially look like and grow with mosses, but they are not closely related to mosses or any plant. Lichen do not have roots that absorb water and nutrients as plants do. But like plants, they produce their own nutrition by photosynthesis. When they grow on plants, they do not live as parasites, but instead use the plant's surface as a substrate. Lichens occur from sea level to high alpine elevations in many environmental conditions and can grow on almost any surface. They are abundant, growing on bark, leaves, mosses, or other lichens, hanging from branches, living on thin air. Epiphytes in rainforest and temperate woodland. They grow on rock, walls, gravestones, roofs, exposed soil surfaces, rubber, bones, and the soil as part of biological soil crusts. Various lichens have adapted to survive in some of the most extreme environments on Earth. Arctic tundra, hot, dry deserts, rocky coasts, and toxic slag heaps. They can even live inside soil rock growing between the grains. As is estimated in 6 to 8% of Earth's land surface is covered by lichens. They are about 20,000 known species. There are. Some lichens have lost the ability to reproduce sexually, yet continue to speciate. They can be seen as relatively self-contained miniature ecosystems where the fungi or algae or cyanobacteria have the potential to engage with other microorganisms as a functioning system, or may evolve as even more complex organisms. Lichens may be long-lived, with some considered to be among the oldest living things. They are among the first living things to grow considered to be fresh. They're among the first living things to grow fresh rock exposes after an event such as a landslide. They are long span the long lifespan and the slow and regular growth rate of some species can be used to date events, and that's called lichenometry. Etymology and pronunciation. The English word lichen derives from Greek tree moss, lichen, like eruption on skin. The Greek noun, which literally means liker, derives from a verb to lick. In American English, lichen is pronounced as the same verb, lichen. In British English, both pronunciations and one rhyming with kitchen are used. Anatomy and morphology. Growth forms. Lichen grow in a wide range of shapes and forms. Morphologies. The shape of a lichen is usually determined by the organization of the fungal filaments. The reproductive tissue or parts, vegetative body parts are called thallus. Lichen are grouped by thallus type since the thallus is usually the most visually prominent part of the lichen. Thallus growth forms typically correspond to a few basic internal structure types. Common names for lichen often come from growth form or color that is typically a lichen genus. Common groupings of lichen thallus form are 1. Fructose, growing like a tuft or multiple branched leafless mini shrubs upright or hanging down, three-dimensional branches with nearly round cross-section or flattened. Foliose, growing two-dimensional flat leaf-like lobes. Crustose, crust-like, adhering tightly to the surface like a thick coat of paint. 4. Squamulose, formed of small leaf-like scales, crustose below but free at the tip. 5. Leprose, powdery. 6. Gelatinous, jelly-like. 7. Filamentous, stringy or matted hair. 8. Bisoid, wispy like teased wool. 9. Structureless. There are various types of growth in single lichen species. Gray areas between the growth type, descriptions, and overlapping between the growth types. So some authors might describe lichen using different growth type descriptions. When a crustose lichen gets old, the center may start to crack up like old dried paint, old broken asphalt paving, or like polygonal islands or cracked up mud in a dried lake bed. This is called being rimose or areolate, and the island pieces separated by the cracks are called aerosols. Aerolos. The aerolos appear separated but are or were connected by underlying prothallus or hypothallus. When a crustose lichen grows from center and appears to radiate out. It is called crustose placidoid when the edge of the areola lifts up from the substrate. It is called squamulose. These growth forms are not precisely defined. Foliose lichens may sometimes branch and appear to be fructiferous. Fruticose. Fruticose lichens may have flattened branching parts and appear leafy. Squamulose lichens may appear where the edges lift up. Gelatinous lichens appear leafy when dry, which means of telling them apart in the cases but are in a section below. Structure involved in reproduction often appear as discs, bumps, or squiggly lines on the surface of the thallus. The thallus is not always part of the lichen that is most visually noticeable. Some lichens can grow inside solid rocks between the grains, lithic lichens, which are only the sexual fruiting parts visible growing outside of the rock. These may be dramatically or these may be dramatic in color or appearance. Forms of the sexual parts do not, in the above growth form categories. The most visually noticeable reproductive parts are often circular, raised, plate-like, or disc-like outgrowths with crinkly edges that are described as sections below. Colors. Lichens come in many colors. Coloration is determined by the photosynthetic component. Special pigments such as yellow usnic acid give lichen a variety of colors, including reds, orange, yellows, and browns, especially in exposed dry habitat. In the absence of special pigment, lichens are usually bright green and olive gray when wet, gray or grayish green, and brown when dry. This is because moisture causes the surface skin, cortex, to become more transparent, exposing green photobiont layer. Different colored lichens covering large areas of exposed rock surface and lichen covering or hanging from bark can be spectacular display when the patches of diverse colors come into life or glow in brilliant displays following rain. Different colored lichen may inhabit adjacent sections of a rock, depending on the angle of exposed light. Colonies of lichen may be spectacular in appearance, dominating such much of the surface of visual landscape in forests and natural places, such as the vertical paint covering of the vast rock surface of Yosemite National Park. Color is a useful identification. The color of lichen depends on whether the lichen is wet or dry. Color description used for identification are based on the color that show when the lichen is dry. Dry lichen with a cyanobacterium as the photosynthetic partner tend to be a dark gray, brown, or black. The underside of leaf-like lobes of foliose lichen is a different color from the top side, dorsiventral, often brown or black, sometimes white. A fructitious lichen may have flattened branches appearing similar to a foliose lichen, but the underside of the leaf-like structure on fructitious lichen is same color as the topside. The leaf-like lobes of the foliose lichen may branch, giving the appearance to fructitious lichen, but the underside with different colors form the topside. The sheen of some jelly-like gelatinous lichen is created by mucilaginous secretions. Mucilaginous secretions. Internal structure. This is a very long article, and I'm not sure if I'm going to read it all because I'm skipping in here the section on internal structure and physiology. I'm going down to ecology. Lichen associations may be examples of mutualism or commensalism, but the lichen relationship can be considered parasitic under circumstances when the photosynthetic partner can exist in nature independently of the fungal partner, but not vice versa. Photobiont cells are routinely destroyed in the course of nutrient exchange. The association continues because reproduction of photobiont cells match the rate at which they are destroyed. The fungus around the angle cells, usually enclosing them with complex fungal tissues, unique to lichen associations. In many species, the fungus penetrates the angle cell wall, forming penetration pegs, haustria, similar to those produced by pathogenic fungi that feed on a host. Cyanobacteria in laboratory settings can grow faster when they're alone rather than when they are a part of lichen. Miniature ecosystem and holobiont cell theory. Symbiosis in lichens is so well balanced that lichens have been considered to be relatively self-contained miniature ecosystems of themselves, in and of themselves. It is thought that the lichens have even more complex symbiotic systems than include non-photosynthetic bacterial communities, forming other functions as partners of holobiont. Many lichens are sensitive to environmental disturbances and can be used cheaply. Assess air pollution, ozone depletion, and metal contamination. Lichens have been used to make dyes, perfumes, and traditional medicines. In a few species, they were eaten by insects or large animals such as reindeer. Lichens are widely used as environmental indicators of bioindicators. When air is badly polluted with sulfur dioxide, there may be no lichens present. Only some green algae can tolerate these conditions. If the air is clean, then scrubby, hairy, and leafy lichen become abundant. A few lichen species can tolerate high levels of pollution and are commonly found in urban areas, on pavement, walls, and tree bark. The most sensitive lichen are shrubby and leafy. While they are tolerant lichens, while the most tolerant lichens are all crusty in appearance. Since industrialization, many of the scrubby and leafy lichens such as Ramalina, Usnea, and Lobaria species have limited ranges, often being confined to areas that have the cleanest air. Lichenicolous fungi. Some fungi have only been found on living on lichens as obligate parasites. These are referred as lichenicolous fungi and are different species from the fungi living inside the lichen. Thus, they are considered to not to be part of the lichen. Reaction to water. Moisture makes the cortex become more transparent. This way, the algae can conduct photosynthesis when moisture is available. And protected at other times. When the cortex is more transparent, the algae show more clearly and the lichen looks greener. Metabolite structure, and bioactivity. Lichen can show intense antioxidant activity. Secondary metabolites are deposited in the crystals in apoplast. Secondary metabolites are thought to play a role in performance for substrate over others. Some lichen contain structures made of fungal metabolites. For example, crustose lichens sometimes have a polysaccharide layer in the cortex. Lichens growth rate. Lichens often have a regular but slow growth rate and less than a millimeter per year. In crustaceous lichens, the area among the margin is where most active growth is taking place. Most crustaceous lichens only grow 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter per year. So if you see lichen, that's old. Lifespan. Lichen may be long-lived, with some considered to be the oldest living organism. Lifespan is difficult to measure because what defines the same individual lichen is not precise. Lichen grow by vegetatively breaking off a piece or many, or may not be defined as the same lichen, and two lichen can merge and become the same lichen. An Arctic species called map lichen, Rhizocarpon geographicum, has been dated to 8,600 years, apparently the world's oldest living organism. Response to environmental stress. Unlike simple dehydration in plants and animals, lichen may experience a complete loss of body water in dry periods. Lichen are capable of surviving extremely low levels of water content, poikilohydric. They quickly absorb water and becoming soft and fleshy. In tests, lichen survived and showed remarkable results on the adaptation capacity of photosynthetic activity with the simulation time of 34 days under Martian conditions. In the Mars Simulation Laboratory, maintained by the German Aerospace Center. In European Space Agency has discovered that lichen can survive unprotected in space. In an experiment led by Leopold Sancho from the Complutense University in Madrid, Two species of lichen, ribosocarbon and geographicum and Xanthoria elangus, were sealed by a capsule and launched on Russian Soyuz rocket 31 May 2005. Once in orbit, the capsules were opened and lichen were directly exposed to the vacuum of space and its widely fluctuating temperatures and cosmic radiation. After 12 days, the lichens were brought back to Earth and were found to be unchanged in their ability to photosynthesize. That's amazing. All right. Reproduction is probably interesting, and sexual reproduction, vegetative reproduction, but I'm skipping that section for now. Taxonomy and classification, I'm skipping. Well, taxonomy is interesting too. Because taxonomy could be, you can classify them as fungi, as photobionts, but I'm going to go down to controversy over classification and species name, method and species name maybe. This is really long. I don't know. I won't be able to read it all. So, I'm going down past identify. Oh, do I want to do controversy over classification names? I don't think so. I want to do. Okay, I'm not doing that. Diversity. Yeah, I'm not doing diversity. I don't think. Identification methods. I don't think I'm doing that. Evolution and paleontology. I don't know. I might come back to that. Ecology and interaction with environment. That's what I want. Substrates and habitats. Lichens cover about 7% of the planet's surface and grow on and in wide range of substrates and habitats, including some of the most extreme conditions on Earth. They are abundant, growing on bark, leaves, and hanging from epiphyte branches in rainforest and temperate woodland. They grow on bare rock walls, gravestones, roofs, and exposed soil surfaces. They can survive in the most extreme environments on Earth: Arctic tundra, hot, dry deserts, rocky coasts, and toxic slag heaps. They can live inside solid rock, growing between the grains on the soil and part of the biological soil crust in the arid habitats such as desert. Some lichen do not grow on anything, living out of their lives blowing around in the environment. When the growing on mineral surfaces, some lichens slowly decompose their substrate by chemically degrading the physiological disrupting the minerals, contributing to the process of weathering by the rocks and gradually turning into soil. When the contribution of weathering is usually benign, it can cause problems for artificial stone structures. Some example, for example, there is an ongoing lichen growth problem at Mount Rushmore National Memorial that requires employment of mountain climbing conservators to clean the monument. Like causes them to clean. Lichens are not parasites on the plants they grow, but they only use them as substrate. The fungi of some lichen species may take over the algae of other lichen species. Lichens make their own food from synthetic parts by absorbing minerals from the environment. Lichen grow on leaves and may have the appearance of being parasites on the leaves, but are not. Some lichens in dipolycytes parasites other lichens. Dipocyclic muscarinium quorum starts in its development of the tissues and host Cladonia species. In the Arctic, lichens, together with mosses, liverworts, make up the majority of ground cover, which helps to insulate the growth and may provide forage for grazing animals. An example is reindeer moss, which is lichen, not a moss. There are only two species of known permanently submerged lichens: Hydrothyria venosa is found in freshwater environments, and Verrucaria serpulodus is found in marine environments. A crustaceous lichen grows on rocks called saxillus lichen. Crustaceous lichen that grows on a rock are epilithic, and those that grow on immersed inside rock, growing between the crystals, with only their fruiting bodies exposed to air, are called endolithic lichens. A crustaceous lichen that grows on bark is called coralloceous lichen. A lichen that grows on wood from the bark has been stripped is called ligulous lichen. Lichen that grows immersed in the plant tissue is called floatic lichen, and lichen that uses leaves as substrates, whether the leaf is on the tree or on the ground, are called epiphyllous or foliculous. A terricolous lichen grows on the ground, on the soil, and substrate as a substrate. Many squamulous lichen or terricolous, umbilicate lichen or follicose lichen, and are attached to the substrate at one point, only one point. A vagrant lichen is not attached to a substrate at all and lives its life being blown about by the wind. Lichens and soils. Skipping that section. Ecological interaction. This section I will read. Lichens are pioneer species. Among the first living things to grow on bare rock or areas denuded by life by a disaster. Lichens may have to compete with plants for access to sunlight, but because of the small size and slow growth, they thrive in places where higher plants have difficulty growing. Lichens are often the first to settle in places lacking soil, constituting a sole vegetation of some extreme environments, such as those found in higher mountain elevation and high latitude. Some survive in the tough conditions of desert and other in the frozen of the Arctic tundra. The major ecophysiological advantage of lichens is they are poikilohydric. Poikilo means variable and hydric related to water, meaning that they have little control over the status of their hydration. They can tolerate irregular and extended periods of severe desiccation, and like some mosses and liverworts and ferns and other resurrection plants upon desiccation, lichens enter a metabolic suspension of stasis, known as cyprobiosis, in which the cells of the lichen symbionts are dehydrated and to a degree that halts the biochemical activity. In the cypriotic state, lichens can survive extreme temperature, radiation, and drought in harsh environments that they often inhabit. Lichens do not have roots. They do not need to tap continuous reservoirs of water like higher plants that have and thus can grow in locations impossible for most plants, such as bare rock, sterile soil, or sand, and various artificial structures such as walls, roofs, or monuments. Many lichens grow on as epiphytes on the surface. Phyte plant. Epi on the surface, phyte plant. On plants, particularly on the trunks and branches of trees. When growing on plants, lichens are not parasites. They do not consume any part of the plant or nor poison it. Lichens produce allelopathic chemicals that inhibit the growth of mosses. Some ground-dwelling lichens, such as members of the subgenus Claudina, reindeer lichens, produce allelopathic chemicals that leach into the soil and inhibit the germination of seeds, spruce, and other plants. Stability, that is, longevity of their substrate, is a major factor of the lichen habitats. Most lichens grow on stable rock surfaces or the bark of old trees, but many other grow on soil and sand. In the latter cases, lichens are often important parts of soil sublations. Indeed, in some desert ecosystems, vascular higher plant seeds can not be established except for places where lichen crusts stabilize the sand and help retain water. Lichen may be eaten by some animals, such as reindeer living in the Arctic region. Larvae of a number of Lepidoptera species feed exclusively on lichen. These include common Foodman marbled beauty. They are low protein and high in carbohydrate, making them unsuitable for some animals. The northern flying squirrel uses them for nesting, food, and winter water. In the winter as water. Effects of air pollution. I only am going to be able to read this for a bit longer. I'm trying to decide how to choose my next section. Effects of air pollution. I'm aware that air pollution kills them. Human use. Food. They can be eaten by... Okay, human use. Food. Lichens are eaten by many different cultures around the world. Although some lichens are only eaten in times of famine, others are staple foods, even a delicacy. Two obstacles are encountered when eating lichens. Lichen polysaccharides are generally indigestible to humans, and lichens usually contain mildly toxic secondary components that should be removed before eating. Very few lichens are poisonous, but those with a high in voluptic acid and oxalic acid are toxic. Most poisonous lichens are yellow. In the past, Iceland moss was an important source of food for humans in northern Europe and was cooked as bread, porridge, pudding, soup, and salad. Edible horsehair lichen was an important food in parts of North America where it was used usually pit cooked. Northern people in North America and Siberia traditionally eat the partially digested reindeer lichen after they remove it from the rumen of caribou or reindeer that have been killed. Rock tripe is a lichen that has frequently been used as an emergency food in North America, and one species, iwake, in Japanese, is used as a variety in North Korean and Japanese food. So I'm skipping lichenometry. As sad as that is, I'm about to run out of time. Biodegradation, I'm skipping. Dyes, I'm skipping. Traditional medicine and research. I'm going to read that. Historically, in traditional medicine of Europe, Lobaria pulmonaria was collected in large quantities as lungwort. Due to its lung-like appearance, the doctrine of signatures suggested that the herb can treat parts of the body that it resembles. Similarly, ruffled freckled pelt was used as a supposed cure for thrush due to the resemblance of in the appearance of the disease. Lichen produces metabolites being researched for their potential therapeutic or diagnostic value. Some metabolites produced by lichens are structurally and functionally similar to broad-spectrum antibiotics, and few are associated with respectively to antiseptic similarities. So, and aesthetic appeal is another section. Colonies of lichen may be spectacular in appearance. In literature is another section. History is another section. And then there's a gallery of pictures of lichens. And that ends the Wikipedia reading for today.